Hello, everybody, and welcome to another SIG Windows meetup. It's the 2nd of April. You guys are lucky that it's not the 1st of April because I love pulling a lot of pranks on April Fool's Day. So, you know, we're safe here. All right, so let's dive into the agenda. I added a few things in there in terms of communications and things that have happened in the last week. Overall, mostly good things for our SIG. So let's run through them. The first thing is, Craig, you want to talk a little bit about the discussion portal and educate everybody on what that is?
Sure. So when in the period when there was an issue joining the Kubernetes Slack, the community realized that Slack isn't the only method or isn't necessarily the right method for all types of stakeholders in the Kubernetes community to collaborate on information about Kubernetes. So they launched a new discussion forum, and the link is in the meeting notes. I can put the link to our particular discussion area for Windows related items in the chat. But essentially we worked with the communications team to launch this Windows specific set of topics, and I've seeded it with some questions about use cases for Windows containers in Kubernetes, and based on some of that discussion, also forked off a discussion around security specific topics for Windows containers in Kubernetes. So I am definitely committed to sort of moderating and mediating communications in there, but I'd also appreciate it if other folks active in the SIG would participate. I think we can do a lot to help people use this new capability more easily. One thing to note about this is it's got pretty good Google SEO characteristics as well. So anything you post in there with links and stuff will have show up pretty well in Google searches.
You know, one thing, I know that if I post in a topic, I'll get all my notifications on that. I'm not sure, and I obviously haven't dug into it, if I can get notifications on anything that gets posted in there.
You can watch specific topics, or you can watch the whole site. It's up to you.
But yeah, but that's when they get created. You can watch the whole site.
I'm not 100% sure that. I think you have to have certain permissions if you want to watch the whole site.
Because that would be very valuable, right? That way, as things come in, like that's how Google Groups were valuable. You know, that new topic was posted. Can you? I'll follow up with Jorge.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm looking at it right now, and the options that you can use for a particular category are watching first post, normal, which will only tell you if someone mentions your name or replies to you. But you can also set it to watching, where you'll be notified of every post.
Where do you see that, Patrick? Is it under?
That's per topic.
So instead of using words, they have a little circle button next to new topic, which I had no idea that's what it was until I started clicking stuff randomly. But
that's funny. Okay. All right. Well, I guess you guys can do that and start watching the topics. Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Craig. So the second topic for today, there's 3 blog posts that came out recently that all of them are super valuable in terms of both educating customers and users on key features of Kubernetes, key features of Kubernetes with Windows specifically, as well as the overlay networking work that Microsoft is doing and driving for Kubernetes on Windows. So Craig and Taylor wrote one of them, Patrick and Michael wrote the second one, and David wrote the third one. They're all linked in the meeting notes. So if you haven't had a chance to read through them, please spend a little bit of time to do that. The next topic is George kind of has been driving these office hours for Kubernetes. Think of them as an opportunity for users to come in and talk to subject matter experts in the Kubernetes community, kind of voice their concerns, get their voice heard, and facilitate a discussion. So we are going to be participants in that on April 11th at 8 a.m. I expect some of the key members that have delivered functionality in 114 that they should attend. James, Deep, Craig, me, Adelina, and a lot of you guys that have spent time on Windows. Make sure you do attend. That way, if we have a question that's related to your expertise, it gives you guys an opportunity to get some face time with customers.
Quick question on that. I see you have a YouTube link there.
Yes.
Is that how you join, or is there also a Zoom meeting and the YouTube is just the rebroadcast?
I think they use YouTube live for this, but as it gets closer, we'll get details from George. I just put the link there to showcase how this will look like. But
okay, got it.
Yeah, when we get
that's not the actual meeting. Okay.
Yeah, that's not the actual. I think that's the link for their channel, but not necessarily how this will look like the day that we need to attend. Once I know, I'll make sure I update everybody on how we'll be able to log in.
Okay.
So that's April 11th. So we'll remind everybody next Tuesday as well, but that's coming up. All right. Let's talk a little bit about kubeadm. Patrick?
Well, I don't have a ton to stay here, but I see Kalia's on the call. Do you want to introduce yourself? Or?
Yeah, hi everybody. One second. I'm Kalia. I did the bulk of the kubeproxy overlay work. And I think I work for Dinesh, and he's agreed that I can take up the lead on this. So basically, I just need to see what's already been done here. And then the goal is to be able, is it for Windows Master or just Windows Worker nodes?
There's no Windows Master, it's just workers.
Okay. Yeah, I know like Windows Master may be something in the future that we're looking into, but not now.
Yep. Do you say your name? You said Kalia or Kalia?
Yeah.
Kalia.
Kalia.
Okay, cool. Kalia. Very nice. There's as part of this work, there's going to need to be a partnership between the Windows team and the SIG cluster lifecycle team. So can you just ping me on Slack after this, and I'll put you in contact with someone from the SIG cluster lifecycle team that is also tasked to kind of help in this endeavor. So I guess the first step will be, take stock of what's out there, what exists and what doesn't exist, and if possible, we need to create a plan on adding this support, and we'll need a cap. So
okay.
we can help you with the CAP process, very well documented. Now it's going to be the second release. We're going to be following it. But our goal is to kind of get the CAP out there as soon as possible. I don't know of the dates for 1.15, but it will be coming up fairly fast in terms of the CAP approval process and going through the motions of getting that accepted so we can start the implementation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I took a brief look at this before, and the main hurdles that I think we need to work on are, right now kubeadm gets a kubelet config that has a lot of Linux specific options set, and so there needs to be some sort of filtering or an equivalent Windows config created, and I think the cluster lifecycle folks will have some guidance on what the right way to do that is. Because I think they actually have a goal of storing the configuration in Kubernetes itself. And so maybe when it generates the configuration, it needs to just generate two. So doing that versus an adapter would be a discussion for them. And then the other thing is that it uses a lot of Linux-specific paths. And so when it goes and creates the files, the Golang libraries will automatically create those paths on Windows, but you end up with like a /etc/Kubernetes kubelet.config or something like that.
Yeah.
And so some of those paths may need to change.
Yeah, I do agree that this, like the config file, is a major pain point for people right now. So.
But the config file is what they're recommending as the best practice for kubelet configs rather than using parameters as we are today. So it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's start the process of documenting everything that we plan to do here, and that way we can eventually put it in a cap. You can start a Google Doc if that might be a little bit easier for us to all document and thread and iterate. And looking at the kind of timelines for the previous release, it looks like the cap enhancements proposal freeze was end of January before, so I assume that it will probably be third week of April for this release. So it gives us about a couple of weeks to get this well understood, scoped, as well as put in a cap. Thank you so much for taking the lead on this. It's awesome.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Then Deep, you wanted to provide a storage update?
Hey, yeah, good morning. So I think a couple of weeks back, Jing and Yuju and I, as well as Nick from Microsoft, we started discussing like what should be the future of, what are some of the things we could do on the storage side for Windows. And I wrote up a doc. I think we briefly went over it during the last meeting. But basically, the idea was to collect most of the thoughts there, get it reviewed by Yuju and Jing, and then present it to SIG Storage to kind of get the overall opinion from them. So we did manage to go over it during the last SIG Storage meeting. And it seemed like the storage folks, mainly Saad and others, were like fairly supportive of like exploring the storage proxy option that I laid out there to enable CSI. The idea being, can we have some sort of a proxy privilege binary that does some of the privileged operations to get things across, specifically the mounts and things like that, that the other CSI drivers can make use of. So there weren't any major concerns or objections around it. So that's something I'm exploring as part of 115. The other thing I proposed was also like potentially looking at introducing SMB entry driver that external provisioners can use. I understand that there are the flex volume drivers today for SMB and iSCSI, but they're not maintained in a Kubernetes SIG repo. So that obviously meant that met like quite a bit more resistance because the bar for entry plugins right now is very high. So I think the suggestion there was, explore the CSI option if there are any major blockers and that cannot be delivered, then go to SIG Arch and ask for an exception around SMB. But we were thinking like maybe iSCSI is something we can introduce some of the Windows PowerShell scripts into where they use iSCSI ADM only today. The main thing that's going to enable is external provisioner scenarios where you can use something like, say, Trident from NetApp or from some other storage vendor and be able to dynamically provision PVs, not just that go for the Linux volume sources, but also Windows.
Very nice, thank you. And the document is linked in the meeting notes, so if anybody wants to have a chance to read through that and provide some feedback, please go ahead and do that. All right, it looks like Jing had a couple of items that he wanted to discuss around MTD and secrets.
Oh, yes. So I think some time ago, we disabled those MTD secrets tests because those are like kind of using Linux specific permissions to test, and it does not applicable for Windows. So, but those tests are like a part of conformance tests. I think we need to have some tests for those. Either we need to like modify the test and to fit in like Windows environment, or another way is kind of like there is some program trying to translate from Linux permission to Windows. They are not exact match, but they kind of transfer like from Linux to Windows. just want to make sure like we want to address those tests.
So which specific tests are you looking at? Because we do have secrets tests that are working with volume mounts that are running today over on test grid.
It is part of, let's say, E2E test, E2E common. There are some like empty dir tests.
Is it part of the node end-to-end
So
test,
can you
Yuju?
repeat?
It's not node. Remember, there is PR before put a Linux tag into those tests so that those tests won't run here.
Well, and so the goal was it wasn't all of the tests, it was only the ones that were testing Unix-specific permissions.
So you mean the goal of those tests?
Can you tell me the exact names of those tests?
Yeah, it's
Because,
test/E2E/common/empty underscore dir.go.
Can you write it in chat or somewhere?
Yeah.
I can look at it later. But for the most part, so setting file permissions will be ignored by Windows kubelet. So unless it's just checking for the default file permissions, those cannot pass on Windows, and they should the tests should have the Linux only tag primarily. Other tests which are checking the default 644 permissions or Windows 755, they already pass on Windows on Azure CNI and GCE Windows and vSphere and so on and so forth.
Okay, I will like check and send you the link about some tests. So I think was disabled. I just want to make sure we have enough tests for those.
Yeah, you can ping me on Slack.
Sure.
I think one of Jing's questions, sorry, it's here, is whether we want equivalent test coverage for Windows for those tests that we disabled, or we are just going to keep it that way.
So there are primarily three types of tests, actually, which we've disabled regarding storage. One of them is regarding file permissions, which we do not support, running as user or root, which we do not support, run as group, which we do not support, and running on storage medium memory. So anything in these categories, we are skipping them.
So for Windows, the medium memory will just not support it at all.
Not today.
Yeah, only the default medium. You can specify medium memory, but it will be totally ignored on Windows.
So it's still like right now it still goes through to create empty dir. It won't give you error. It's just like it's not the memory.
Yeah, exactly. It will create an actual empty dir file directory and mount that into the container, not an actual memory storage file system. So
Right.
Yeah, and we call it very clearly both in the CAB and in our docs that that's not supported. You know, there's quite a few things that we don't support, and we had a discussion with Ben last week as well over a couple of tickets, or should we start blocking these things? I'm kind of torn between that, because in some items we might be able to fix them in the future, so doing work right now to block them, it may or may not be worth it, so we can take it case by case.
Okay, sure. So one item I added just for test, I will ping like on Slack about those tests again. And so the other item is just like I pre-mentioned before, the step path. Right now is working for like disk, like GCPD disk. But there is an issue saying SMB does not support subpath. So I'm wondering on our document, should we clarify like what is support, what is not supported? Because right now it's just saying subpath is not supported, I think.
I think we support SMB, right?
We
You mean
support
there was-
we support SMB using the iSCSI, using the.
We have out-of-tree flex volume plugins available
right.
for those.
Yep.
So, and we have a link to that volume. I'm gonna get it right now so I can send it to everybody. But there is a link on.
Okay, so it's just an issue created by Andy Zhang about SMB does not support subpath. So I kind of asked, he gave a reason about like evaluate Symlink does not work for SMB, remote mount.
So there is a few subpath situations that we don't support.
The doc is not clear about that, I think.
No,
so,
I mean, so I have the doc in front of me. It says volume subpath mounts are not supported. Only the entire volume can be mounted on a Windows container. And we also clearly call it the subpath volume mounting for secrets is not supported.
So I don't think those are accurate.
Are you saying?
So for subpath, right, for GCPD, it's largely like mainly basically I think supported, at least.
How did you do that? Because the subpath mounting requires the ability to mount individual files, and that doesn't work with Docker.
Not file, it could be a directory. So
Yeah, they probably mounted a folder.
Yeah, you can have folder subpaths as well, not only files.
Okay, so the Linux subpath automatically includes both files and directories. So I guess what you're saying is the document should say subpaths only work for full directories, not for files.
Right.
We could enhance that, but we probably need to is there anybody else that can actually verify that before we go update this?
I will plan to add our GCPD subpath tests. So those.
Okay, so that will be sufficient. Yeah, let us know, Yuju, me, and Patrick, and we'll update the docs as well once you have that.
Sure. And the other thing is Toppen like discovered some related to mount propagation. It's saying mount propagation host is only support, but actually in the code, right, it is mount propagation private. It's not mount propagation host.
Yeah, so I think we actually filed 2 PRs as a result of that issue you filed on that. So I think I believe they're on Patrick's plate right now to review, and we'll get those in updated. So yeah, you're correct. So that I don't know, the code I guess doesn't lie.
Yeah, so I saw those PRs fix the docs. It's still, I guess, an open question of if we, if host to container would actually work, and should we allow that for 115?
My understanding is that it will not work because of the way the file system driver works on Windows. It can't propagate back to the host.
I think this is propagating from the host to the container, the other direction.
That certainly works.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, so that is currently not permitted by Kubelet as an option.
So the biggest thing here is, does it work? Yes or no? Likely it will work, but we don't have the code for it. So someone might have to go and fix it.
So that's what I'm saying is for 115, somebody should look at that if that's a change.
Okay, can you open an issue and assign it to me? And then I'll get it handed off to the right person.
So also interestingly, as part of the CSI investigation, I was trying to propagate down sockets from containers to host, and that seemed to be working too.
Yeah.
So
Okay, excellent.
Like a directory path with a socket in there, with a name socket in there.
Well, but creating a socket is just effectively creating a file at that point.
Right, and when the container listens on that file, a process from the host can dial to that socket and reach the thing in the. That was very nice.
Very cool. Thanks, Steve. So Patrick, on that ticket that you asked for earlier for the host mount propagation, we might be able to use the first ticket that Yuju created on that. So we'll update the docs today, and then once we actually fix it, we'll revert the docs and push the fix in. So
I think it would be overall like nice to have test coverage for everything that we say we supported, even though it may not be conformance test. So I can set up several test suites for GCE. If you guys add any tests that you think is currently supported, I'll be happy to like do the same for GCE too.
okay.
I mean,
It will come down to resources, but we'll.
Well,
Yeah, of course, but
I think the same test. So if you can find an existing test case that we're just skipping, then I think that's the way we should fix it, because we should be able to run the same test case in both places.
Yeah, I feel like we've been focusing on conformance. That's why some of the test cases were not there. But since we are moving forward and whatever like problems we run into or features we actually discover that we support, we might as well just add the test to the test suite.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so for that, I'd say let's just start filing issues SIG Windows and say, uncomment and fix these tests, and then we'll do it for everything on test grid at once. I think that should be the best way to do it.
Sounds good.
All right, then we only have about a minute left, so let's try to wrap it up quickly. Patrick, you want to talk about Containerd?
Yeah, I'll circulate a doc in the meeting notes for next week. I'm still finishing up some investigations there. But the short summary is that we're going to need to update multiple KIPs related to runtime class. And so I need to write up the use cases for this, and I'll do that before next week. The builds that we actually need don't exist yet, but I think most of the code is there. So when I circulate that doc, I'll have at least some partial steps of how to get Containerd for this. But one of the work items over the course of 15 is going to be depending on the main Containerd repo to get those Windows builds published that are missing today. And so I think that one of the things we'll need to do is either, if we don't depend on the upstream build there, then maybe we pick another repo and say, for the course of alpha, we're going to build from Patrick Lane Containerd or something like that. But I'll get those detailed out there. So, and I'll be getting that to SIG Windows and SIG Node for discussion next week. So
awesome, excellent. All right, it looks like we're out of time. Is there anybody that has a really pressing concern or an issue that they want to discuss? Or all right, excellent. Thank you all for attending. We'll see you guys next week, and please add to your calendars the community discussion time for the April 11th. All right, see you guys. Have a good day.
All right, bye.